Hey there, thanks for joining me. This is Board Gems. I like to talk about older games, sometimes pretty darn old games. Are they still gems? That's the thing I want to talk about in this video series. So what's the game this time? This game originally came out in 1995. This edition is not 1995. I actually don't know when it came out. Late 90s, early 2000s, I would say. Condottiere. Please don't send me comments about the pronunciation. I do my best, I really do. Designed by Dominique Ehrhard and published originally by Eurogames. Eurogames was a moderately big publisher, probably the biggest board game publisher in France in the 90s. They had a few different versions of this. The original one was apparently a big long box, like a power grid size. This one is more reasonable. This is a multilingual edition, the first sort of English language edition that you see is from Fantasy Flight Games in 2007. Those rules are actually, I wouldn't say they're crazy different, but they do definitely go in a further direction away from the original rule set, including changing how some of the cards work. I have not played the Fantasy Flight version. The word on Board Game Geek is that's the version you want to avoid. And I did a side-by-slide comparison in which I said, hey, avoid that one. But I admit I was going with the BGG Hive Mind there. I actually haven't played it. Over 10 years later, we have another English edition, and this is from Z-Man Games, and that is this one. So you can see, very small box. This is a fairly standard size box for Z-Man. They have a few other games in this format, like Blueprints, Beyond Baker Street, Traders of Osaka. It's for 2 to 6 players. This version has special rules for 2, which I've heard good things about, but I haven't tried it with 2. For me, it's a group experience. And different rule sets take different lengths of time. The rules gradually have made the game a little bit quicker. There are variants, especially for the old one, that you can't really play with the new one, but there are variants that can make the game really, really long, if that's what you want. This is sort of sunk costs the board game. There's a simple map of Italy. This would have been when they were city-states, right? A condottiere is sort of like a general, I suppose. Back in the city-states, they didn't have their own standing armies. It was generally considered at the time that you didn't want an army of your own people, because just as much as you wanted to defend against attackers from elsewhere, you also needed an army to keep your people in line. And the general thought at the time was you don't want your own people as a military suppressing your own people, because then the military might turn on you. So this was the period of Swiss mercenaries and German Landsknechts, if I'm pronouncing that right. Your goal is to try to capture city-states, regions on the map, and you do this with a hand of cards. These cards have to last you through multiple battles before you get a new hand. And when you're playing cards, you're committing armies to a particular battle. You can skip a battle. You can hold off and let other people fight for it. And that's why it's kind of sunk cost fallacy, the board game, because you might be committing a big army to a battle, but maybe somebody else is committing a big army too, and you guys are using up all your cards, and there's another player over there who's like, yeah, this is good, yes, use up all your mercenaries, all your armies, and I will benefit later. That's kind of big picture, but why don't I show you how it plays? This is the most recent edition, so I'll use this version, and I'll also use this version's rule set. I'm going to be using classic rules. So I mentioned Fantasy Flight changed the rules, right? The Z-Man edition keeps those same changed rules as the default, but includes extra components that allow you to play the classic way. And that's the version I fell in love with. So I'm going to teach you with this edition, but with the classic rules. Then afterwards, I'll talk about the game some more. To set up the game, place the board on the table within reach of the players. Give each player all the markers of one color. Keep the general piece nearby And that's all you do for the start of the game. The game takes place over a number of hands. So at the start of every hand, you're going to shuffle up the deck of cards and deal each player 10 cards, plus 1 for every region they occupy. Somebody who owns a region will put their marker in it like that, and now that's their region for the rest of the game. The game ends as soon as one player controls 3 regions, all adjacent to each other, or any 5. That player wins immediately. At the start of every hand, shuffle up the deck of cards and give each player 10 cards plus 1 for every region they occupy. So yellow in this case would get 12 cards. And then you're ready to start the hand. The game takes place over a number of hands. So the flow is that at the start of a hand, each player will get that number of cards to start, and then that hand of cards has to last them through multiple battles. And the round ends when only one player has cards remaining. That player has to discard all their remaining cards, and then the game continues. You'll take all the cards, the discards, the played cards, shuffle them back up into the main deck, and then deal out a fresh hand, and we continue. The start player is going to take the general piece and place it on any empty region, that is a region that is not already owned by a player, and that player starts the battle. On your turn, you will either play a card and add it to your army for this battle, or pass. If you play a card, then by the time your turn comes around again, you can play another card to add to your army, or pass. If you pass, you cannot add any more cards to your army for this battle, but your army doesn't go away. The army stays there. And by the time everyone has passed, if you are the player with the strongest army, you will win the battle, even if you were the first person to pass. So when everyone has passed, or when certain special cards have been played, the battle is over and we evaluate and see who has the strongest army, or perhaps due to special cards, some other thing can happen, some other way of evaluating. And then the player with the strongest army gets to put their marker in the region, and they get to choose a new region to compete for. Let's talk about the cards. The most basic cards are mercenary cards. They range in value from 1 to 6, and there are also 10 value mercenaries. These are your basic grunts. These are the mainstay of your army, and the strength of your army is the sum of all your mercenary cards. But there are also some special cards that you can play and add to your army. One is the drummer. The drummer doubles the value of all your mercenary cards. The winter card affects everybody in this battle, and it takes all the mercenary cards in front of everybody and makes them value 1. So this army is now only worth 3, not 8. But the winter card affects everyone. So somebody had a 10 card out, that 10 is also a 1. A scarecrow allows you to take back one of the mercenary cards you've already played. Perhaps you started strong with a 10, and so they make a big commit. They're going to fight you for this. And you're like, I don't think I actually want to fight for this after all. I'm going to play a scarecrow, and I get to take back any mercenary card that I've already played, put it back into my hand for a later battle. It was all a ruse. Another special card is the heroine. As you can see, it has a strength of 10, but importantly, it is not a mercenary. So the heroine is not affected by winter cards, which would make its value 1, or a drummer, which would double the value. It's just a flat 10. Now, normally, players will be playing these mercenary cards, possibly some special cards, and then at some point they pass. But even if when there's just one player remaining, they can keep playing cards. The battle doesn't end until every player has passed. However, 2 special cards throw a monkey wrench in that because they end the battle early. This is the surrender card. The surrender card stops the battle immediately and is evaluated at that moment. Even if there are players still in the battle that have not yet passed, too bad, they don't get a chance anymore. We stop the battle immediately and look at the current strengths of all the armies, and the strongest army will win it. The final special card is the bishop. The bishop also stops the battle immediately, but he brings peace. He said, we should not be fighting, we're all brothers. So this ends the battle with no winner. There's also no winner if everybody passes and it's a tie. Then there is no single winner. Regardless, all cards played to the battle are discarded. They're taken out of this hand. So there is a risk of overcommitting, committing too many cards to valuable cards to a battle and yet not winning it, and you still lose those cards. These are mercenaries. You paid for them, you deployed them, but you don't get a refund. At the end of a battle, after it's occupied, then the winner of that battle can choose another location. But before that, any player who has no mercenary cards left, so the only cards they have left in their hand are special cards, they may, before the next battle starts, take all the remaining cards in their hand, which are all special cards, and discard them. And now they are out of the hand. They are not participating in the rest of this hand. And importantly, if all players have done so except one, the hand is over. Even if that player has a full hand of cards left, they won't get a chance to play them this hand. They're going to lose all their remaining cards and just be dealt a new hand for the next round. So you may be tempted to hang back, let other players fight for regions, and then come in late with a big powerful hand, but there is a risk of waiting too late. If you're the only player with cards remaining, you're not going to get a chance to use them. And then the hand is over. Take all the cards that were played or discarded, add them back to the deck, shuffle up the deck anew, and then deal out a new hand of cards to players. 10 cards per player, plus 1 for every region they occupy, and start another hand. So over the course of the game, regions will be occupied. The game ends immediately when one player owns 3 regions that are all connected to each other, or any 5. And that player wins the game. That's it. You're ready to play Condottiere. I've heard Condottiere described as a mean game. It's not mean, but it is unforgiving. That's probably the better way to describe it. I don't like it when a game is described as mean, because it kind of ignores the fact that when you're playing a game with other people, you are abandoning on purpose the rules, the etiquette, the niceties that you would do in a real world environment, a real world setting, and agreeing that the rules on the table are the only thing that matters. In what has been called the magic circle, right, where everybody agrees to play a game and then leaves feelings at the door. As long as you're playing by the rules and you're not like really targeting people, like attacking the same person over and over and over again. I mean, I can imagine anybody could get frustrated by that. You're not attacking other people in this game. There are regions on the board, and you're playing cards to commit an army to taking over that. But other players may also want that, and you're competing with them. You can almost think of it like an auction, albeit an auction in which you lose your bid even if you don't win. And this is the part that I think people would have the biggest potential problem with. Lots of things that can happen that can mess you up. You could play really strong mercenaries, and somebody could play a winter card that makes all the mercenaries worth 1, making your extra strong mercenaries not any more powerful than the weakest mercenaries. You can commit a big army, and then somebody could play a bishop, which just nullifies the whole battle. Again, this is classic rules I'm talking about. The bishop does something different in the new rules. You could be competing with somebody else who temporarily has the strongest army, and when your turn comes around again, you want to add to your army to make it stronger. But before that, somebody plays a surrender card, which immediately stops the battle and awards the winner at that moment, so you don't get a chance to respond. I can imagine this would frustrate some people. You have to go into the game with the right mindset. It's chaos. You know, a game can sometimes, and often nowadays, a lot of games have guardrails. They don't want to make it easy for you to have a bad experience. So they put these really tall guardrails on the game experience where you're kind of directed on this path, and as soon as you start to play badly, there's there you go, you know, like a bowling alley but with the gutters removed, right? A little that they do for kids, have little guardrails come up. There is a possibility that when you, without those guardrails, you play a game, you could lose horribly. That's great for a laugh, isn't it? You know, you play a big battle, you're competing with other people, somebody who's still in the battle, but they haven't really committed too much. Maybe they're just playing low-valued mercenaries. Maybe they took one back with a scarecrow, but they're still technically in the battle, but they come in with a bishop, and your army is now gone. You get nothing for them because they're mercenaries, right? You still pay the mercenaries. You paid for the mercenaries by getting the cards, and then you told them to go to Parma or Carrera or whatever, and fight for that. If they don't win, you still pay them. So while I wouldn't necessarily say that the game is super realistic, right? The theme does fit with that mechanism, right? Where you are acquiring an army and you're getting whatever you can, right? So the card draw is random. And you're deciding with this army, what are my best moves? Like, where should I compete? I love the fact that with mercenaries, both low cards and high cards are useful. High cards are useful, obviously, because they're very strong. And if you have high cards out, there's always the threat that you, or somebody else who's still in the battle plays it, but then they're giving it to you, that threat of a surrender card is always there, right? If I'm coming out with high cards, people don't know if by the time it comes back around to me, I don't have a surrender card. If I have a surrender card, I can play it and win the battle immediately because I started with the most powerful army. But there's always the risk of somebody playing a winter card, which makes the more powerful mercenaries not worth any more than the weaker mercenaries. Somebody could play a bishop and then you've used up your most powerful mercenaries and didn't get anything for it. The low-valued mercenaries are useful because they help you stay in the battle. So you don't have to commit too much. You play a 5, I play a 1. You play a 6, I play a 1. Now again, I'm worried you might have a surrender card, which would make you win it outright. But at some point, you might have to go, you know what? This is really strong. I think this is already strong enough that I'm going to win it. If I add more, it's probably wasted, right? I'm going to take a chance that I'm going to win it with what I have already. So I pass. Now, when a player passes like that, they can't come back in, but their army stands and could still potentially win the battle. Now, here I am with a bunch of 1s. I'm still in the battle. If you bow out too early, then I can come in with more powerful mercenaries or heroine, and you can't respond because you've already passed. There's a real sense of brinkmanship in this game. This is what this game is all about. And it's an experience that you can't find in newer games. Because again, a lot of those newer games have those guardrails that, you don't want you necessarily having a very bad experience. So let's just make sure everybody kind of has the same experience, and one player ends the game with 30 points, another one 27, another one 25, good game, on to the next game, and nobody had a really bad experience. And you could argue maybe they had a good experience. Maybe that's fine. If you like that sort of thing, that's fine. There's lots of games that I have that are like that. When you have as many games as I do, you really, really want different experiences. You want unique experiences. Maybe unique is the wrong word. Distinct, You want games that don't do what other games do. There's just enough special cards in the game to make it a little bit spicy and make it interesting. And make it so you can never be too sure that you're going to win something. There's always a threat out there, right? If I have a big, strong army in front of me, I'm worried about a bishop. I'm worried about a winter card. If I have a weak army in front of me, I'm worried the other player has a surrender card. Like in this game, every decision matters. Even if it's just, when it's a battle coming up, do I want to commit to this battle? I could skip this battle, but I can't wait too long, because if everybody uses up their cards and I'm the only one with cards left, I lose my chance to play them. Another brilliant design decision. So I can't wait too long, right? I have to jump in, but waiting might be good if you have people. It's like in an auction, like a big auction where they have many lots for sale. Oftentimes, like the early lots tend to go for a lot, and the later lots tend to go for very little, because people, just human nature, they tend to overcommit early. And that can happen in this game. Again, that human nature showing itself in board game form. You see 2 people, 3 people who are overcommitting early, you may want to hold back. Then you have less competition for the later battles. The winner of a battle chooses where the next battle happens. If you have 2 regions and you really want to connect a 3rd region, you have to be able to choose where a battle is taking place, because we're fighting for this one, which will win me the game if I win it. But how do you get the Condottiere? You have to win a previous battle, right? Win the previous battle, then you get the Condottiere, and then you can choose the next one, right? But if you win that previous battle, maybe you've used up a lot of your cards, you don't have enough to really fight for the one you really want. There are definitely things that you can do to be better at the game, but it's just as much about reading other players and reacting to what they do than just coming in with a set strategy and hoping it pays off. Reaction is important, deciding in the moment based on, okay, there's 2 people in this battle that, I'm still in it. This is their army, that is their army. What should I do? Should I bow out before I commit too much? Should I throw in some special cards? Should I just play my big mercenaries, try to win it outright? They're decisions that you have to make in the moment, right? You have to react to other players. You have to react to the state of the board. But it is an unforgiving game. This is, for me, a really strong recommendation. I love this game, and I always enjoy playing it. But it's not going to be a game for everybody. You need to know going in and have everybody at the table know going in. This version doesn't take too long. That's an advantage of playing with this newer, again, classic rules, but still, the rule set keeps the game short. And for a game in which potentially people who aren't expecting it might have a little bit of a potentially bad experience, like if they play poorly, they will do poorly. And some people will take that to heart. So probably playing a short version of the game is probably the way to go. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference in rule sets. Again, I'm not talking about the new rules that were introduced with Fantasy Flight. I just want to talk about some changes between this version and the classic rules of this version, which are very similar to these. And I want to talk about just the tweaks. So this one, the only win condition is having a certain number of connected cities. If a player can't get that number of connected cities, you just play until the whole board fills up, and then whoever controls the most cities wins. Completely fine way to play. It does make the game longer, and that's a problem if somebody's not doing well. If somebody really isn't competing, like they don't have a chance of winning like multiple in a row, and they don't have enough that they think they can compete for having the most, then they have to suffer for a little bit longer, right? This is probably a nice balance. It's any 3 connected regions or any 5, period. So the end of the game is never too far away. Some people think of this as rich get richer. Don't think of it like that. In this game, at the start of every hand, you will get a hand of 10 cards, plus cards based on how many regions you occupy on the board. For this it's 2, for this it's 1. So if I already possess 3 regions, In this version, I'm getting 16 cards. And in this version, I'm getting 13. That seems really powerful, right? Early cities get you more cards for later in the game. So, you know, if you don't really think about it too much, you might instinctively react and say, that's a rich get richer problem. That's not good. That's bad. That's bad game design. No, the thing is that in this game, the later battles are far more vital than the early battles. So you have to add incentive for those early battles. You want people to want to win the early battles too, because they will get a benefit. 2 cards per city is huge. It makes sense because this version's a bit longer, so it makes the early battles worth even less potentially. So win 2 cards per city to really add an incentive to win those early battles. It still feels like a lot to me, and because these rules make the game a little bit shorter, it was a very good decision, I think, to decrease that to 1 card per city. So if I already possess 3 regions, 3 cities, 3 city-states, I'm getting 3 extra cards, which is a benefit, but it's not super massive. So yeah, so this does have a whole new way to play, introduced in the Fantasy Flight Edition. So it comes with changed cards and new cards. So one of the special cards that is in all the editions is a winter card, and that makes all the armies the mercenaries worth 1, not their face value. But in normal Condottiere, once somebody plays a winter card, that's it. You never come back from that for that battle. That battle will always be in the winter. And in the updated rules, you can play a spring card, which changes that and actually makes the strongest mercenaries even more powerful. So it's potentially possible to go like back and forth between winter and summer, winter and spring, I should say. Oh, look, I want to say I haven't played these. If I complain, I'm just going by vibes, because like I love the old edition's rules so much. Very skeptical of these, but I want to share that I haven't played them. Take what I say with a grain of salt. That's not so interesting to me that people could potentially get into that back and forth. And I don't like always wanting to reevaluate something. You can play a special card and it changes the values of things. That's fine. But I don't want necessarily to have lots of changes, lots of special cards that make you constantly want to reevaluate. The bishop now does 2 things in the new edition. One, which I think is kind of interesting, is the player who plays the bishop gets to choose one region where it is not possible to choose that when choosing where a battle takes place. That one's off limits until somebody plays another bishop, which then they choose a different region. I kind of like that. I'd like to try that. The other rule, though, is that at the moment the bishop is played, all the copies around the table of the most powerful mercenary get discarded. The third one, not so interesting to me. In Fantasy Flight, they called it the courtesan. In this version, they call it a spy. Spies are just worth 1, not very interesting. There's quite a lot of them. But also the player who plays the most of them in a particular battle then chooses where the Condottiere goes instead of the normal rule of who decides. It's fine. It's kind of eh. So look, I'm not saying that's bad. The way it was great. I didn't see a need to change it. And particularly in the Fantasy Flight Edition, they don't really give you a way to play the old way. So the bishop, you can just say the bishop does a different thing. That's fine. And spring cards you could leave out. The only thing is that there are fewer 1-value mercenaries in the deck compared to the classic rules. Now, I don't know how much the exact card mix matters. It's a big deck, but still you can make do by making up the difference with those courtesan/spy cards. And just say, oh, just treat these as 1-value mercenaries, because they're 1 value, right? So you can kind of kludge it and make it work. This version does come with actual replacement cards, so it comes with enough mercenaries, or one-valued mercenaries, to play the classic rules with the classic card deck makeup. And because this one actually has a little Euroglyph reminder, like a little thing on the bottom of the card trying to remind you what it does, which is honestly impenetrable. Like, it's you cannot understand what it means unless you already know what it means, and it acts as a reminder. That's what those do, right? You're not going to learn it, what it does, by reading the Euroglyphs. I love that term, Euroglyphs. Isn't that great? Because this version has those little graphics, just, you know, reminding you what it does. The bishop, you'd have to remember, like, oh, the bishop does a different thing, but this actually comes with replacement bishops that actually change that text, those graphics. So the reminder matches the old edition. You don't need that for Fantasy Flight because they don't even have that reminder on the card. I'm going way into the weeds here. To summarize, I strongly recommend the game, but I can only recommend the classic rules. I haven't played the new rules. I'm not that interested because I just love Condottiere just as it is. So I have a hard time recommending the Fantasy Flight edition, and that's probably the easiest one to find used. But if you want to play with the classic rules, you can make it work. It's just a little bit of a kludge. But there is one other thing that I want to mention, and I recommend, if you're interested in getting this game, to check out my side-by-side comparison of these two editions. The big difference is the card art. Now, unless I'm mistaken, the card art for this Eurogames edition was actually done by the designer of the game, Dominique Ehrhard. And if you look at it, it's so distinctive. And it's on these really long cards. I guess, are those tarot cards? I'm not sure, but they're really long cards, very distinctive. If you're a sleever, you're going to hate them. But they're so visible around the table because they're big cards, and the values that are in the corners are really big and really easy to read. And the art is so distinctive and really brings you into the time period. I think it's really interesting because, like, this old version, they made decisions in terms of the art style to try to evoke the time period. And that's something that not a ton of games do. Like, if you look at the Fantasy Flight edition, if you look at the Z-Man edition, and you look at that art that they use in the cards, it's nice. But it's also very similar to a lot of other games. It's only evocative in what it's portraying, not how it's portraying it. The art style is very, very common in a lot of games. So, like, I really like this edition. And I have some other games, you know, that are in this format. So, you know, they all look nice on the shelf. And that's one thing I like to do. But I can't bring myself to get rid of this edition because the card art is so great. The art style evokes the period. And that's something that, surprisingly, a lot of games don't do. You know, you see a lot of games with very similar art styles. And the newer versions are like that. So if you're thinking of getting this edition, please check out my side-by-side comparison because you might fall in love with the cards from this edition just as much as I did. Thanks for watching. Older games like Condottiere are absolutely 100% still good. Oh my god, so good. Take care.